Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Flight Path. As always, we've had an incredibly busy week here at Tern, and we've got a great show for you today, recapping everything. This is the first Flight Path episode that you've ever tuned into. Welcome to the podcast. This is where myself, one of the co-founders and CEO of Tern, joined Molly and Brad. Molly leads our product team, Brad leads our design team, and every week we sort of talk about what we've done that week, what's evolved with the product, what's new, what's coming. And this has been a particularly, I'll call it hectic week, in that we have been in an all-out sprint getting ready for what I think may be one of the biggest webinars, certainly of the year, maybe ever. We say that every time, but the team gets bigger, we do more stuff, and so that actually is true every time. So I was just at an event, and I was like, if you're going to attend one event, it needs to be the webinar next week, and you can register on the website. We'll put a link in the show notes. But with that intro out of the way, like, subscribe, do all the things. We'd love for this to be a regular place that you're getting your Tern news. But let's jump in and kind of talk about the week, and starting with just like, how are you? Molly, we'll kick off with you. How's your week been?
David, I always laugh at you when you talk about how it's going to be the best webinar yet, because I feel like you give off reality host vibes where it's like the most dramatic episode yet. And it's like, everyone is that, but I actually do agree with you in this particular circumstance that it might be the best.
It might be, but you're saying that, you know, if I need a career change at any point, I could be a reality TV host. I'll take that.
I think so. I actually can do that quite well. Yeah, my week has been hectic. Lots of slide engineering for the webinar. I also kind of had a special moment this week where we have Tuesday engineering demos, and I've actually been doing some prompt engineering for some of our destination guide updates. So I got to pretend to be an engineer and actually demo. And I joked with the team that I literally was more nervous for that than to actually present to thousands of people at our webinars. So I get to do it again today on the podcast. But no, it was just kind of fun to kind of put on my technical hat for a few days to make our destination guides prompts better.
And she crushed it. I mean, spoiler alert, you'll see this later. It was really cool. So, prompt engineering, slide engineering, Molly's got it covered. Love that. And if you want to see Molly's great slide engineering work, make sure to tune into the webinar next Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern time.
The most dramatic one ever.
The most dramatic. I know. I feel like, yeah. I stand by it, though. You can let us know. If you're listening to this, attend the webinar on Thursday and give us feedback on what you think, how it compares to the other ones. Let's just say that. We'll let the audience be the judge. But Brad, how's your week been? This isn't a script. Something exciting is happening on Monday. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I was like, what's happening Monday? Monday, our new designer joins the team. We will be doubling the size of the design team from just me to me and Ursula, who's joining Monday. So that I'm so excited about. And also that has been taking up some of my time this week. So it's just another thing we're jumping between, we have a webinar coming up, another designer joining we need to onboard, and all of these projects that just don't stop, the stuff we want to ship next week and the 2 weeks after that, and prepping for the next piece. So it's been a wild week, but all just maybe a highlight for me. I got to talk to a couple different advisors and agency owners yesterday, just catching up, doing some Q&A on features and different improvements they were looking for. And it's just always so fun to connect in real life with people, and then have them just talk about how Tern has changed their business, and how much they love all the things we've done. And that's really the most energizing thing for me, and it's what's taking me through into next week. So yeah, always love doing those. So
fun. I definitely feel that it's been such a busy week, and it's kind of tough because it's we can't. I feel like, at least a lot of the stuff I was working on, it's I can't really share too much about what we're working on the podcast without spoiling next Thursday. So I'm going to be a little bit more mysterious on the week and just do a plug there. But yesterday was in Savannah for the Legato conference. Legato is one of our big agency partners, and really feel kind of what you were describing there, Brad. It was just so special to be able to kind of present a little bit on what we're doing and how the partnership is continuing to evolve, but also just hearing from Tern users, many of whom came up and they're we love listening to the podcast. I listen on my drive every Friday. And you'll say something or you'll make a joke about your facial expressions, and then I have to go watch it again on YouTube. And then, and so like, they're like, I'm watching it twice. I was like, well, maybe that's actually our secret plan to really boost the watch count, right? It's like, you got to watch it in 2 different places. But it was just so fun, right? That like people spend time with us in this capacity on their weekend or on their drives on Friday. Like it is really special to see and hear the stories about how Tern's like having an impact on their business. You talk to a group that does a bunch of destination weddings. You talk to people that are, building their agency for the first time. It's really, really cool just to be talking to all of you who are listening to this and learning and seeing the impact of Tern. It's like incredibly energizing. Flight delays meant I didn't get home at 8 o'clock like I was supposed to. I got home at 2 a.m. In the morning, but I was like still just feeling so energized because it's like, what we're building matters, and we know that because of the conversations from all of you. And so it's really been a fun week from that perspective. And then there's been a bunch of stuff that you'll find out on Thursday that we've been working on. So we've been talking about the launch a lot. One of the things that I wanted to talk about at the top of the podcast here before we jump into kind of what we shipped this week is when we look at our data, one of the top drivers by far of how people find out about Tern and how they decide to try it, how they attend a webinar, is all of you, is the Tern community kind of sharing this and making kind of connections and being like, hey, this is a great way to kind of find out about what's happening or why I love this system. And so we wanted to, because we really do believe this is going to be one of the biggest kind of announcements yet, and not just for the product, but also just for the industry more generally, we really wanted to make sure we're getting the word out, and we wanted to recognize the people that do that. So what we've done uniquely for this webinar is we've created a unique code for every Tern user. You should have gotten an email from one of the leadership team members. You can also go into Tern and the little chat bubble where you get support. If you open that up and you go to news, you should be able to access your personal link there. And then I think either later today or kind of Monday, we'll have a pop-up that shows up when you log into Tern. All of those will be the same code. And for every person that registers with the webinar or for the webinar with your code, you will have an entry, kind of like a raffle, to win a free users conference cabin. So we're going to comp that for somebody who refers that. Want to make it clear that it's not about how many people sign up with your link. It's not like the person who drives the most registrations is guaranteed to win. It's more of like the raffle, where if you have 5 people that use your link, then you will be entered 5 times into this kind of giveaway. So even if you just share it with a small community of a couple of friends, like it will still increase those chances. If you've already registered for the users conference, you'll get a refund if you do win. So kind of worth it either way. And again, that's just our way of trying to make sure that we can get the word out, but also recognize the people who really do that, which is all of you. And the listeners of this podcast in particular, we think about as being kind of the core group that will really help us do that. So thank you in advance for sharing that. We really do think this is going to be a pretty special event. We've got a lot of special guests. It's going to be really, really cool. So with that out of the way, with the reality TV host hat coming off, I will hand it back over. We're gonna jump back into what's shipped. And Molly, I think we're going to kind of kick off with you on some invoicing updates before we get into your prompt engineering in just a little bit.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about invoicing last week. It was even more exciting than I realized. People are really, really excited about it. But as always, it's like we're so excited, and also we want these 10 things. So we have addressed a number of them. There are a few things just around like the logo sizing appearing on the invoice and some of the layout spacing to make it a little bit more polished. And we have one other thing that I won't actually talk about now, but it's actually the top request we've gotten that's in flight as we speak. But the major feature that we've added to address feedback that we even got when we initially did the survey, we did a feedback survey to collect how you would want invoicing to work in general, is streamlining the workflow from when you actually generate the invoice all the way through to sending that invoice over to your clients. So now when you actually generate an invoice in Tern, we'll kind of pop up a modal to email it right attached within that modal to your clients directly, pre-filled content in there. So it really should take only a few minutes, few seconds, really, if you want to generate an invoice and then update your clients with that invoice, which is pretty cool. And it was actually funny. Once we launched it in the Facebook group, someone was like, I forget the exact quote. I wish I had looked it up right before, but essentially that I'm going to butcher it. Something about us being Yoda and delivering what she wants without her even asking. So I thought that was really fun.
Love that. And it resulted in a new Slack emoji, I think, for us, right?
Yes,
Now we have, so
now we have 2 Yoda Slack emojis, actually. I had overlooked the previous Yoda Slack emojis, so now we have 2.
Yeah. One is, I would say, like cuter than the other one.
Mine is cuter. Yeah.
Yours is, okay. I wasn't sure who to give credit to for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Glad we got that cleared up. But that is so exciting. And the invoicing flow is just really special. Again, we'll kind of talk about that in depth. We talked about it last week. It's really, really cool to see how that's coming together.
Just one other thing, like I know we've talked recently about minimizing clicks, making Tern feel more intuitive based on your workflows. So I think this is just like a good illustration of that, where it's like pretty much every time you generate an invoice, it's to send it over to your client. So can we just make that so easy and like as easy as possible, where you're just adding a template or doing a little bit of personalization, but just sending it off without downloading, reattaching, pulling up their emails. We're saving so many steps and so many clicks with that update.
So cool. Love that. And it's like kind of an incredible number of invoices that have already been created, right? Wasn't it like the first 6 days, it was like over 1,000 invoices were sent or something like that? I mean, that's sort of mind-boggling how quickly people are starting to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think a healthy percentage were people like testing it out and, trying to break it and play around with it. But a significant number were legit too. So pretty cool.
995 of them were just Molly testing. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true. But that's super cool. And we also, I think we talked a little bit about this last week, but made some significant progress on kind of one of our first big partnerships from a kind of data process perspective. Brad, you want to kind of talk about the signature process?
Yeah, so we've been working over the last couple of weeks on an integration with Signature to be able to basically sync information about your clients, their preferences, whether they're opted in or out of marketing, all that stuff to Signature's system that handles all that. And if clients make updates there, those get pushed back into Tern, which is, I think, really the first integration we have that's consuming data from outside of Tern and then updating things in Tern from an outside system. So it's been a huge effort from the engineering team to do that, from Jade, our PM on that project, who's just like testing every possible scenario to try and break it before we even like have Signature test it and eventually have a beta testing agency work with us on that. But we have made it through all of our own internal testing, smashed some bugs in the process, and like found a few things that is like super good for us to find now before we have any agencies on. And now basically the reins are kind of in Signature's hands. They're doing their own testing and making sure it meets all of their test cases they have. But it's looking really exciting. We're pretty close to having at least one agency be able to start using it. And we have a pretty long list of folks who want to move over to Tern and work with Signature. So I'm really looking forward to getting that out. And we'll share some more about that integration and some details there in the webinar next Thursday.
And Brad, just to make sure, like, we talk about this like two-way sync, right? So I think like last week we talked about, okay, cool, like Tern's now successfully pushing up, data to the Signature kind of mothership, things like marketing codes and like key information there. This two-way sync is now kind of like coming back, right? And like, I think I've heard, I don't know if it's like Signature, but an example is like these consortia will like subscribe to the post office like change of address list, and they'll actually update that in their system. And so they could like push updates like back into Tern. Is that kind of what we're talking about with the two-way sync here, is that we can actually now start to update, kind of core fields on the contact record based on what the consortia knows and the research they've done?
We can update fields in Tern based on information coming from the consortium. I'm not sure about the consortium updating that stuff versus the thing we're optimizing for, I'll say the thing we've tested, is clients can log into their Signature portal and update things in Signature, and that gets pushed back into Tern. I don't know, but I'll have to follow up on the consortia level updates. We haven't talked about that as much.
Well, I know everybody probably does something different. Molly, go ahead.
Call it the mothership. I think regardless, like either way, mothership.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, that's probably fair. But yeah, I think like this is, we've talked about this before, right? Like for your Signature agency, this is going to be, we think the best sync out there. We've talked to so many agencies who are like, these other systems like that we tried to set up the signature link and it was like super painful. And it's just been really fun to watch this really mature and kind of come to life. And we'll show a brief overview of this next week. But having a dedicated tab where you can easily see all the marketing codes and all the information, you can see the last sync date, like all that information just clearly and cleanly visible, and having it be bidirectional is really special. The kind of timeline, we will talk about this more generally, but like signature is the first one that we've been working with. We do have plans to support all the major consortium over time. So stay tuned for kind of more announcements on that. But it's something that like we really have kind of built this to be flexible. So if your consortium isn't one that we're talking about right now, let us know. It helps us prioritize who we should kind of work with, and let them know, because they also have to do work on their side to kind of make this a reality. But a lot of more to come on this piece. Anything else on the signature side that we want to talk about before we move on to some prompt engineering updates?
I think we should let Molly be an engineer.
Oh boy.
Let's do it.
I shouldn't have this that way. Pressure's too high now.
The pressure, I mean, to be fair, when you jumped in on engineering updates on Tuesday, I was like, what in the world are we going to be looking at? I had no idea. This was like another one of those like total surprises where I'm like, I would probably bet money that what you are about to show would not work. So I'm like truly and sufficiently like shocked by this, and it is really, really cool. So with that tee up, no pressure now. Hopefully it works. But
well, no, it is cool. I was like, so my husband, Zach, is the lead engineer. And I was like, I wonder if I could get this working from a prompt perspective. He was like, I don't think so. And then like, I did. So it's kind of cool. Okay.
You didn't say that. I feel like you really should have leaned into that more. But like, Zach thought this was going to be done and I did it anyway. Like,
okay. So we're talking about destination guides, which, as a lot of you know, you can come into Tern, you can click to create a destination guide on any of your itineraries. You can even do things like describe what your traveler's preferences are and, any specific restaurants you want it to include. So you can really get as creative as you want in this prompt. And what I actually saw when looking at some of the data and listening to some user feedback around this is some people actually wanted to include Google Maps links within the destination guide that's created. And before this change, they were asking it to do that, and it would kind of just make up broken links. So it would kind of attempt to do what you're asking, but it wouldn't actually work. So let's just start with a very basic example here, which is like, I wanted a guide for Paris, top destinations to see, include Google Maps links. So if you were doing this before this update, this just straight up wouldn't work. It would be broken hyperlinks. And I'm not promising it will work in this demo, because as with anything AI, sometimes it works, or even a lot of the times it works. And then maybe that 1 in 100 time it doesn't. So hopefully it does this time. But you're seeing that it's generating this great destination guide, nicely formatted. And now it's hyperlinking view on Google Maps. So let's just open a few of these to see if it worked. And it's looking like it did, right? It puts Eiffel Tower into the search destination for Google Maps, and then they would be able to click to see directions wherever they are, kind of when they're accessing this.
Molly, remember that thing we talked about earlier where you're like, normally I share my whole screen so you can see all the tabs, and we're like, I think it's working really well. It's not working very well.
That is so, this is why I do this. And then there's always the bug, and then you always make fun of me. So we're
not making, no, we're just, want to make sure that people can see. Oh, there's that.
Okay. Just so funny. Okay. We're going to try this again. What I was doing before was clicking to see these various examples on Google Maps.
And maybe just like, for those that may be listening, you might kind of talk through a lot of this, but kind of orient you, went into the itinerary, created a city guide, and specifically in the prompt just said, give me Google Map links. And so now Turner's come back with the city guide, and in the city guide, there's a bulleted list of different attractions. And at the end of that sentence, so like the top one is Eiffel Tower, no visit to Paris is complete, blah, 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 blah. And then it ends with, Eiffel Tower's must see. And then it has a hyperlink, which is view on Google Maps. And so that's what Molly's clicking on right now. And it brings up a beautiful Google map with the Eiffel Tower right in focus.
Thank you, Sportscaster David. I always do just a mediocre job with that. So all of these should really work. just showing different examples in Google Maps of it working. But what's even cooler, I actually like this example better. I wanted to show you the basic version, so you can really just ask it for maps. Again, always spot check the links. It's not going to work every single time, but it should, it should work a lot of the time. So I have another example here. And in this case, I'm actually saying my clients are staying at this hotel whose name I can't pronounce. Could you share some good cafe recommendations within walking distance, including Google Maps links for them? So let's see what that does.
I really hoped you were
Also-
going to pronounce that hotel name.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was like, bold choice. Like, picking a hotel for the demo, I'd be like, I don't know how to say this, but this is what I'm going to use.
So let's see if this worked now. So it's saying cafes near the hotel name that I'm not going to try to pronounce. And for all of these different cafes, if I click through again, just to show some examples on Google Maps, let me actually, you know what? This is a good teaching moment let's just like work on our prompt a little bit. So, could you share some good cafe recommendations within walking distance? Please include Google Maps walking links from the hotel. Let's just see if that
walking directions links.
And while you're kind of updating that prompt, so what had happened was, again, if you're listening, like Molly had submitted the prompt, it came back with the recommendations of the cafes. It did have the Google Maps links. And when you clicked on the Google Map link, it brought you up to the cafe, but it was just the kind of cafe. Now they could have just tapped on that and said, okay, give me the walking directions. But, Molly, I think wants to show that we can even better.
Yep. So I wanted to tweak my prompt a little bit. And actually, when I tested it previously, it worked. So I think sometimes you just have to be a little more specific depending on the mood of how it's feeling. Okay, let's see if this works. So again, the hotel we can't pronounce. And there we go. It's working. So now you're seeing it's putting the hotel as the starting point and the cafe as the ending point. And it has the directions in there. And for some reason, it's doing a bus. It's just really this demo is not speaking my language today. Here we go. This one's doing walking directions from the hotel to the cafe. So I don't know. I think it's kind of cool. I'm really excited to see what people do with it. We can even tweak the prompt further to improve it based on examples we're seeing. But this should just go a long way to making an even better and more personalized experience for your clients with these destination guides.
Molly, kind of cool is the understatement of the year.
I was gonna say,
when you demoed this, I was like, this is a lot. She made this up. There's no way this can actually
literally.
I don't.
That's so cool.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
I couldn't agree more. I think like massive underselling, like even like, it's not the perfect walking directions. For your clients, it's literally one click to be like, give me the walking directions, right? I mean, this is so cool. And like, what a neat way for your clients to be like, like we woke up in the morning, we don't know what to do. Like, here's 3 cafes. I can just tap on them. And if, presumably if you're on mobile, it's just going to open it up in Google Maps for them and you can just navigate there. Right. I mean, and the fact that it literally is pre-filling the hotel for those directions, this is wild. And I think just such a cool example of where AI can deliver a better client experience that can save you a ton of time, help you as an advisor do research. Like this is, just really, really cool.
And maybe just one other thing, I think actually that demo was a good example of another feature I'm excited for us to build in the future, which is to be able to like iterate a little bit more easily with the prompt. So like if I did that initial prompt and it was like almost there, but not quite right, I could just kind of respond with like, actually, can you provide walking directions and have it update? So more coming soon. Like that's something that I'm really excited for us to improve. But it was kind of a real-time problem solving of how you could approach it today. I actually, as like a little tip, I like to copy and paste the text so that I can easily then just like copy and paste it again to tweak it if I need to, if I'm not fully happy with the results.
Love that. So I'm sure people are going to love playing with that. And it's one of those kind of fun ones where, again, like we're just constantly learning and huge props again to you, Molly, for like coming up with a creative solution. Because I don't think anybody would have guessed that was possible. I mean, like I was like, you're probably gonna have to do function calling and you have to do the API with Google Maps and like figured it out. So that's super cool. And so play with that. Excited to get your feedback. If you do break it, let us know, right? It's helpful for us to just have a sense of like if there are specific edge cases or use cases, because AI can be non-deterministic, as the engineers say, which means you're not guaranteed the same output with the same input. So it kind of creates all these interesting kind of product problems, but also creates a lot of really neat opportunities to do things. And with that, we are now in our new, one of our favorite sections, because it's the only one that has a theme song right now, which is Quality of Life Updates with Brad. Let's cue the theme song.
Oh, I thought you were going to sing the theme song.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't have it memorized yet.
Right.
But I like, well, hopefully we can get the bobbing and that's sorted to the beats. And now that the theme song's over, Brad, we've got some real quality of life updates. Why don't you take the people through just, those little things that just add up to the big things,
Sure, yes. And I think this is a much bigger thing even than I realized, which was first one, we have a date picker in Tern. If you're trying to pick a date for an activity or like a hotel stay, how long is it going to be? You click on this button, you get a little calendar that pops up. Depending on where your input is on the screen, it might open to the bottom, it might open to the top. One really wild thing happens, or used to happen, or if you go to a month that had more weeks in it than other months, it would just move around on the screen and be like, I don't want to be at the top anymore. There's no room for me. I'm going to the bottom. And you have to chase it around the screen when you're trying to just like go to a certain month to pick a date. It was a terrible user experience, and we fixed it. So shout out to everyone who flagged that for us. It took us a little longer than it should have to get it done, but that will hopefully be not noticeable anymore. It'll be one of those things that like you might not notice unless you hated it so much that you're like, wait, this is better. But it's
which people did. Like I saw on Facebook, people like, thank God the date picker doesn't move anymore.
Yeah. So
it's a cool one too, because I got a ping from our engineer Spencer with a link to the Candy post and a link to the GitHub solution, and it was basically just like a little present to start my day. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Love that.
All right. And so after that one, we fixed another one. This is a little more complicated to explain, but I'll do my best. If you have an automation, let's say you have a workflow that you have set up for your agency or for your team, and you have triggers within that workflow, either like auto apply triggers, or I think triggers on the automations within it as well that are based on status. Say you're like, oh, if the trip moves from whatever into booked status, you should auto apply this workflow. Well, we previously weren't copying that status over, even if your advisors had the same status. And so, yeah, actually, I'm getting this right now. If they applied the workflow to a trip and it brought in a bunch of automations, all the automations wouldn't actually trigger because they like had that, they were based on a status, and we didn't match the status on the name. We were matching it like on ID kind of in the back end. And so they would like have to go manually update each individual automation to make sure it actually triggered. That's all fixed now. So now if your advisors have the same names of statuses on their kind of on their trip board that you do, they can use those workflows without needing to make a copy of them and updating all of the individual statuses. Did I do all right there, Molly?
That's right. No, you did. And I think the reason this came up was actually we had a few agency owners who their explicit way of empowering their team was to say, hey, don't copy the workflow into your library because I'm updating it, I'm tweaking it, I'm always making sure that it's like looking good and has the most up-to-date information. So just when you're applying it to your trips, just toggle over to share with me and add it. And it was just like messing up that whole workflow. So we heard that a few times and we were like, oh gosh, we have to fix this. And then we did.
Yep, exactly it. And then a few more here. If you're using booking imports for your agency, which is mostly just if you're a newer agency coming on board to Tern, you're getting all your old historical data into Tern. We now support much larger uploads. So previously it was capped at a certain amount. And now you can have more and more previous bookings that all can come in at once instead of having to break it down into multiple individual files. And then one other smaller one, if you're dragging a form block around in the form builder, we no longer like highlight a bunch of text on the page while you're moving things around. It just works like you'd expect it to, and you can just move it around and you don't have to worry about all this weird text highlighting going on. So little
and
things.
You know what? Scott, who created our theme song, flagged that one. So it's a nice little thank you to Scott in our quality of life section.
We pay for theme songs with quality of life improvements.
Love that. I feel like it's fair trade. I'm a little worried about how many theme songs we may now be getting in our inbox. But again, it's just Molly at Tern.travel. And and with that, we are in our lovely week ahead section where we talk about what is coming. And I have a feeling that we may have some shared keywords here. But Molly, in the agenda, you get the honor of going first. I think probably because you wrote the agenda. So that is strategic, but you're on it. So take it away.
Yeah, I think there's something happening next week that we've maybe mentioned a few times, which is the most dramatic webinar ever. And in order to make it very dramatic, we are actually trying to hold a few features and launch them specifically, probably the morning of the webinar. So my hands are going to be pretty full, let's just say. And I'm not going to say what the features are, but some people might guess, but don't tell. So.
But don't tell. Well, I mean, now, like, literally everyone, we're just going to see traffic spike on Thursday morning as everyone's like going in to try and find them. So the Tern detectives.
As you were talking through, as you were explaining the feature, you're going to be flipping the feature flags on. So people...
Absolutely not. That's too much for my...
I mean, we need some drama, you know.
I like it. Yeah. It's like click refresh and boom, now this thing looks different or has been added depending on what it might be. All right. Anyway, so Brad, what are you up to next week?
Trying to be less loopy than I am today. Yeah, so I mean, you got the webinar. That's going to be the highlight. But also, I'm just really genuinely excited about Ursula, our other designer, joining. I think it's going to be so cool to have another person on the team, and that's going to take up some of my time, but will pay dividends long term. So really, really looking forward to that. In addition to the webinar.
Yeah, it's been so cool. Like we've got Ursula joining, we've got Tyler joining. Like the team continues to grow. It's always fun when people join like on webinar weeks because it's just sort of like a wild introduction to this incredible industry that we work in. So that'll be really fun, kind of continue to grow the team. But yes, next week is going to be all about webinar prep. It really is amazing how much kind of goes into making these things happen, right? From the slide deck, making sure that that looks, kind of great, that the story flows, that we've got everything that we want to cover, but not too much that's like a distraction. It's coordinating with our guest speakers. It's making sure that, people know about it and that the word's getting out. It's like, there's just like so many kind of moving parts to this. And, everything else is still happening, right? Like we're still supporting customers. We're still shipping new things. Like, so these are always kind of crunch weeks for the team, but always just like culminate in such a fun experience. We've shared this on previous podcasts, but it's like the comments and the chat is one of the highlights for our teams. Like we've heard like particularly like engineers that'll come into Tern, they'll see a feature that they built talked about in the webinar and they see the chat and being like, the oh my God, this is incredible. Or like, this is going to change my life. Like, and it just makes this so fulfilling. So like it's a lot of work to get there, but it's always a really, really fun thing to kind of share what the past, I think it was 10 weeks, Molly, you said, since the last webinar has been kind of focused on. So that'll be that. And so we'll be back most likely next Friday with kind of webinar recap on just everything that's happened and maybe a little bit more of a kind of behind the scenes look and unpacking some of the big things that we announce. But I'll maybe leave and kind of close the podcast. Just like I was talking to somebody at the Legato event yesterday, and it was kind of fun. They're like, Tern's growing so quickly. They're like, one thing that I hope you don't lose is like the podcast, right? I mean, like as you all get busier and busier, they're like, it is such a powerful glimpse into the organization and how you operate, and like, please don't stop doing it. And I thought that was just like a really cool thing. And what I said to them in response was like, our entire company is based on like, how do we be transparent? How do we kind of share and how do we build alongside you for you as an industry? And so when I think about whether it's this exact podcast on these exact dates, but like our commitment will always be to communicate with you, to be out there, to be, visible and present and to lean in to the hard problems. And that's sort of what I think about this podcast as being all about. So as always, thank you for listening. Go ahead and click on the subscribe button if you haven't already. Leave us a comment if you're watching or listening, and we look at all of those. And please tell your friends and colleagues about the webinar next week. We are hoping, we would love to break an attendance record. And I think there's a real chance of us doing that with your help. So thank you, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks all.